of the eukaryotic cell. She didn't think of it first, but it was she who really put it on the map and advocated it, argued it, and convinced the world.
This is about having organelles like
Yeah.
mitochondria and chloroplasts,
That's right.
which were beasties on the outside and came in.
So the cells that make us up, the large complicated cells that make up most of the large animals and plants that you ever see, in fact everything except bacteria, are themselves colonies of bacteria. And this is a magnificent idea. It's almost certainly correct, and to her goes the credit for it. That was a vital step in evolution, and from it much followed. But more recently, she's gone overboard for the idea that there's something almost mystical about cooperation. Now, cooperation does, of course, happen, and my own first book, The Selfish Gene, is quite largely about cooperation. But Lynn Margulis has jumped to the view that this is somehow an alternative to Darwinian evolution, and she's set herself up as a sort of anti-Darwinian evolutionist, which is just unhelpful and doesn't illuminate in any way.
Before I go to the audience, I want to ask one last question myself about design. Now, there's in the male there's the prostate. I mean, really. With women, it's having to give birth with all that appalling agony. And then with the giraffe, is it the laryngeal nerve?
The recurrent laryngeal, yes. Yeah.
Which goes round the houses and back, as if it's doing a day trip somewhere.
Yes, that's right. The body is filled with these examples of lousy design, which result quite clearly from history. And it's easy to see why they're there. They're historical relics. And the way evolution works is to take what's already there and modify it. It's been called a tinkerer. And if you constantly tinker, if you never are allowed to throw it away and start with a clean sheet on a clean drawing board, which is what an engineer does, if you had to evolve the jet engine instead of designing it by taking a propeller engine and change the propeller engine one screw at a time, one rivet at a time, think what a clumsy apology for a jet engine you'd end up with. And that's the way, I mean, in a way it's remarkable that living bodies are as good as they are, considering that they are tinkered about from history. I mean, it's what happens is that there's a sort of botched job, and then natural selection comes up and kind of cleans up around the edges and ends up with not a bad approximation to a good job, but nothing like as good as you'd get if you started with a fresh drawing board.
I've told you before, there's only one great example of undoubted intelligent design by God, and that is the creation of homosexuals. Because obviously there's no compelling evolutionary reason that God would have done it except to give us K.D. Lang, George Michael, Leonardo da Vinci, half of my department in the ABC. I mean, it's fantastic. Where would we have got? Anyway, yes, please.
We've all heard the story about the poor giraffe eats the leaves and survives, and now everyone knows that story. I don't believe it. Firstly, male giraffes are 2 to 3 feet higher than female giraffes, so the tallest would be starving to death the females which reproduce. Second point is that the baby giraffes, or giraffes when they're first born, are only 6 feet tall. And they are weaned at 8 to 10 months, and they take another 5 to 7 years to reach maturity. So surely, once weaned, they're on their own and wouldn't survive. They'd be starved to... The species would be starved to extinction because the younger generation...
Your question?
I'll take it from there.
Fine.
Okay. This is a familiar type of question. What you say might be right if there was a kind of if it was like a sort of hedge where the trees were upside down hedge, where there was a sort of level below which there weren't any leaves. And then you'd be perfectly right that males could reach it and females couldn't, or juveniles couldn't and adults could. But it's not like that, is it? Because what nature